All right, so for 20 marks question, yeah, for 20 marks question, maybe I'll give the idea first before I go through the answers. For 20 marks question, it is divided into two components, yeah, two components. There's a knowledge and analysis component, and one more would be the evaluation component, yeah. So 20 marks question, it can be divided into knowledge and analysis as well as evaluation. And in actuality, this is 14 marks for knowledge and analysis, and it will be 6 marks for evaluation. So this is the idea, 14 for knowledge and analysis, and it will be 6 marks for evaluation. This is the suggested strategy, the suggested strategy by Cambridge. This will be recommended. However, I also have another alternative breakdown, yeah. Alternative breakdown of 20 marks. We can also break it down into 4 to 5 marks for knowledge. And then what about 9 to 10 marks for analysis? And another 6 marks for evaluation. So this also can be an alternative breakdown, so you can understand how the mechanism of 20 marks. Now, when we say knowledge, this will include what? This will include definition of the key terms mentioned in the question, and then graph or diagram, if applicable, or if there are any graphs related with the question. Not all question has a graph, so you don't have to draw a graph. If you look at this question, then most likely this question requires a graph, but it's not mandatory to draw a graph if they don't ask you to do so. If they don't ask you using diagram, using graph, with the help of diagram, if they don't mention that, then it's not a must. But for this question, I think that there's a high chance that you can draw a diagram if you want to, meaning to say it's applicable. Characteristics or further details of the key terms. Examples related. Other ways of showing knowledge, yeah. So this one is the knowledge, and analysis would be you have to discuss both sides of the argumentation. The question usually would be asking, evaluate this statement. So you have to discuss both sides of the argumentation. If I quote from this question, then you have to say that you must discuss the fact that oligopolies are able to avoid price competition. Also discuss the fact that oligopolies might not be able to avoid price competition. So this is called discussing both sides. You see, both sides of the question needs to be discussed. Both sides of the argumentation. If you only discuss one side, then you cannot get any evaluation marks. That's the problem. So if you only discuss one side of the argumentation, then you cannot get the evaluation marks. This one will include the possible impact, the possible reasons or impact or consequences. How will it affect the firms maybe, or can be individuals. It depends on the question. If it's micro, it will be firms or individuals, but if it's macro, it can lead to government also, or it can lead to the whole economy. They have to see the impact. Yeah, how does it affect firms, individuals, government, or the whole economy? This is what you have to see. Okay, this is for the breakdown. And one more is evaluation. You will make a conclusion. Conclusion will already gain you. Let me just make it very clear for evaluation. Okay, the first evaluation mark would be, okay, for the first evaluation mark, it would be writing a conclusion. So when you write a conclusion, in conclusion, oligopolies are able or are not able, that would already gain you 1 mark. The second evaluation mark would be reasoning to support your conclusion. This should be another point or selecting one of the strongest points from analysis. It depends on the situation. And for the third mark, third evaluation mark would be what kind of conditions may affect the given statement. The fourth one, it could be comparison between short run and long run. The fifth one, it could be different context, yeah, different context. At times, it may be possible, but in the other times or at other times may not be achievable. At times it may be possible, but at other times it may not be achievable or possible. What kind of conditions or external factors may affect the given statement? And of course, the sixth one, it would be overall judgment of the given question. This is like overall you are giving your final closing statement with regards to the given question. So evaluation, very, very clear how you have to achieve, but for knowledge and analysis, it's combined. As long as you begin properly with the definition. So when we see this one, we need to define the key terms. Define the key terms, yeah. You need to define the key terms. For example, oligopoly, what is that? The examples, yeah. The examples, the characteristics, and then what is the meaning of price competition? What's the meaning of price competition? And then supernormal profit. Give some understanding throughout the answer. That will be knowledge. You will easily get knowledge of 4 or 5 knowledge marks if you give understanding, examples, characteristics, then you will easily get 4 to 5 knowledge marks. It becomes challenging for analysis because you need to compare 2 different points of view. two different points of view that in what kind of circumstances it may be possible, but in other circumstances it might not be possible. So that's the general idea, right? So I will show you how to answer, I think, for this question. I'll move it downwards first for the guidelines so I can begin on producing the answer. So for the first part, as I said to you, we will be providing the definition. We will provide the definition of oligopoly. Yeah. The definition of oligopoly needs to be provided. So we can start. Let me type in. So oligopolies is a market structure. Yeah, it's one type of market structure. Type of market structure in which there are few large firms. There are few large firms who are dominant. So the type of market structure in which there are few large firms who are dominant in the market, and they may sell similar or differentiated products. They might be selling or they might choose to sell similar products or differentiated products. They have a choice. There are high barriers to entry, and they have some price making ability. Yeah? They have the ability to set prices. Okay, this is like with this kind of statement, of course, you will get 1 mark for sure because you have already given the definition of oligopoly. This is the first knowledge mark. Then I can develop again. Oligopolies can be identified. How do you know if that market structure is oligopoly? How would you know? So oligopolies can be identified through calculation of the 4 firms concentration ratio. I hope you have known of 4 firms concentration ratio, in which if the result of the calculation is above 60 or 70%, then it will show that the market structure and it shows that the market structure is an oligopoly. So this is an introductory paragraph, which will be counted as 1 knowledge for sure. Then going beyond this one, beyond this stage, we will be doing what? Beyond this stage, we are going to look at the question. We have price competition. We need to give an understanding what is the meaning of price competition. And for your information, oligopoly usually takes 2 different approaches. And just to give you an idea first, an oligopoly firm, usually oligopoly will take 2 different approach. One is called aggressive approach. Or competition. Yeah. Aggressive or competition. 1S, yeah. Aggressive or competition. And the other one would be cooperation. The other one would be cooperation, or it can also be mentioned as collusion. In some cases, it can also be cartel. So you have to understand first that the basis or the basic of oligopoly. They can have aggressive or competition in their approach, or they can also work together, also work and discuss together. That's called cooperation. Okay, that's the first idea for you to know, so that when we discuss this one, that means we need to compare it with cooperation. When we discuss price competition, then for sure we need to compare it with cooperation. You cannot just discuss one side, only price competition, then of course you cannot reach the higher level marks for analysis, and you cannot have the evaluation marks. So now going into the next part will be introducing that there are two approaches that can be taken by oligopoly. The first one, okay, the first one, as I mentioned, is competition, and the second one is cooperation. So we have two different approaches. So in competitive oligopoly, you have to explain first the first one. In competitive oligopoly, each firm tries to be the market leader. Each firm tries to be the market leader, in which they try to be the dominant force, in which they try to be the dominant force in the market, so that they are able to be the price setter or price maker, and let other firms follow their action. So you want to be a leader. You want to be the leader in the market. You want to be the leader in the market. Okay, so this is the idea. Then we can move on that and introduce the game theory, or it's more commonly known as the prisoner's dilemma. We can move on and continue discussing with regards to prisoner's dilemma. So there is an approach, there is an approach. There is an approach in competitive oligopoly. So there is an approach in competitive oligopoly. It is called game theory or prisoner's dilemma. So we have to incorporate this discussion later on. This will affect the operations of the oligopoly. Assuming now the example, assuming that there are two firms. Assuming that there are two firms in the automotive industry. Automotive industry. These two firms will not communicate with one another about pricing or output decisions. Which means what? Which means that each firm has their independence, in deciding prices and output. So they have their independence in deciding prices and output because they are not communicating. Again, they are competing. So we don't have a discussion between these two firms. These two firms are trying to be the stronger force, trying to be dominant. So they don't communicate. They don't discuss with the other firm. That's the first. However, when one firm decides to decrease, now we have a situation, a scenario with regards to price competition. When one firm decides to decrease their price, the other firm will likely follow and decrease their price as well. And of course, there's an explanation behind this. There's an explanation behind this, and that is explained by the kinked demand curve. Yeah, why is this situation happening? Of course, it's because of the kinked demand curve situation of price rigidity. Can explain that with the king demand curve situation. So why? Why would they decrease their price? Because they do not want to lose their market share. However, when one firm increases their price, usually other firms will just keep their prices the same. This is done in order to attract more consumers to buy. So imagine our competitor increase price. We will not increase price because if they increase price, it's more beneficial for us to keep the price the same because it will be cheaper than others, right? We will be having a more competitive price so we can buy more from. So our products will be bought more by the consumers. That's the logic. And this is called the king demand curve concept. So this situation leads to interdependence. So there will be an interdependent situation between firms. What you decide is going to affect others, and what others decide will affect how you operate in the market. And it's also known as the king demand curve situation. This you can draw the king demand curve if you wish to, so you can support your explanation. You can draw a king demand curve, very easy, with elastic and inelastic demand. Yeah, elastic above the king and inelastic below the king. So you can draw that as a support for your explanation if you want. Otherwise, you can just give illustration. That's also fine. In which above the king or middle point, demand becomes elastic as firms are going to respond to the price changes of one firm, while below the king, the demand will be inelastic. Yeah, the demand will be inelastic as firms will not be responsive to the price changes of one firm. Because as we said just now, they will not be following the price changes of one firm. This kind of situation leads to price rigidity. So this is called price rigidity. And we are elaborating here price rigidity concept. So due to this king demand curve concept, and due to this king demand curve concept, it will affect, yeah, it affects how, it will affect how firms should behave in an oligopoly market. And this connects to the concept we mentioned before, to the prisoner's dilemma theory, which was mentioned before. Okay, so we can now introduce the prisoner's dilemma in connection to this situation. While it is best to keep prices in the middle or kink and not to take any risky actions of trying to adjust price, right? Not to track any risky actions of whether decreasing or increasing price. One firm cannot guarantee. You cannot guarantee what other people will be doing. One firm cannot guarantee. As we said, we do not know the actions of other. So you cannot guarantee what other firms would do. But therefore, what's going to be happening? Therefore, the best action that can be taken is only considering what actions would most likely benefit our firms. In this case, we should take what? We should take a more aggressive. I mentioned in the earlier part of the discussion that we can be more aggressive. In this case, we should take a more aggressive approach. This means what? This means that we don't care what others are doing. This means that whatever the other firm's actions are, other firms' actions are, we should always try to lower prices, as this could increase market share. This could increase market share. As you know, if we lower price, then consumers would be buying from us more. This is if we look at our perspective only. And even though other firms can do the same, it will again come down, right? It will again come down to price competition between the firms, between the firms in the market. If firms decide to increase price, it would most likely be a less ideal strategy, as it would lead to lost market share when consumers switch and buy from cheaper alternatives. Okay, this is what we have here as the situation. And this kind of scenario, yeah, so the above scenario, the above illustration shows that firms in the oligopoly market are not able to avoid price competition. So they're not able to avoid price competition and will most likely not be able to maintain supernormal profit. So when we want to finish the paragraph, it is beneficial if you go back to the question and give an evaluative statement. So towards the end of the paragraph or the discussion, you can go for an evaluative statement and go back to the question. Not able to maintain the supernormal profit in the long run, as they have to engage in price reductions. They have no choice but to engage in price reductions to be competitive in the market against other firms. So this is going to be the main analysis for this question. However, I mentioned already that we have two things to be discussed. One is the competitive approach, and the other would be the cooperation, right? We have two. So this is the competitive, it's longer, more detailed, and we have one more, which is the cooperative approach as the other analysis. Once this is done, you will go. So the other approach in oligopoly would be the cooperative approach, which is also known as collusion, as I mentioned, as collusion or cartel in some cases. And we need to give an idea of what is the meaning of cooperative approach. This is where firms decide to work together and discuss the prices, discuss the prices and output to be sold in the market. So you'll be discussing what is the proper price and what's the proper output between firms. So you will be agreeing how many or how much output and what is the proper price for the goods in the market. These kinds of practices actually is not really allowed by the government. These kinds of practices are usually avoided by the government. It's usually not allowed by the government, but it may still exist to some extent. It's not allowed by the government because it will lead to higher prices, and of course, it will not be beneficial for the consumers. But if we say that this is not going to be strictly monitored, let us say it's not strictly monitored in case there is a cooperation between firms, there will not be any price competition happening as prices have been agreed. So under this scenario, there is no price competition because prices have been agreed. Also, the amount of output sold in the market is also set. So consumers will not have much choices because they already fixed the quota or fixed the quantity being sold in the market. So consumers will not have much choices. Will not have much choices with the conditions available. And what's going to mean if this will happen? This will mean that firms are going to maintain price. As we progress our analysis, we need to go back to the question so we can answer the question. Maintain price at a certain level. At a certain level. Which means what? Thus, enabling them to enjoy super normal profit. So this meaning to say, under this situation, supernormal profit can be achieved. Under this situation, supernormal profit can be achieved. However, there may be what? There may be obstacles, right? There may be one or two firms who are breaking the trust, you see, who are trying to take advantage and try to break the cartel or break the collusion. This is the other side of the situation. And try to lower price or sell more output in the market. And when this happens, the collusion or cartel, the collusion or cartel will break up that will not be sustainable, will break up. And this again shows that it will be very, very challenging, very difficult for firms in the oligopoly, for firms in the oligopoly to maintain supernormal profit in the long run. So again, we go back that to our thesis, yeah, our statement that it is very, very difficult to maintain supernormal profit in the long run. So you can see as I go back to our answer, the knowledge is well written and you introduce the different approach in oligopoly and you should discuss under each approach what is happening, what is going to be the impact to the firm, what are the limitations or the different weakness of that approach, and then we go to the other approach as well about cooperative approach. We need to discuss it in that way as well. And after this is done, we will go for sure to the conclusion. And if I may remind you, for conclusion, we have 6 parts. Write the conclusion, the reasoning to support your conclusion. And then the third evaluation mark would be what kind of conditions or external factors or factors outside, maybe government, maybe if it's macro, it could be the current state of the economy. It could be the other policies or other situation or trade barriers or different things that happen outside of the firm, outside of the market that could affect comparing between short run and long run. And then when is it possible? When is it not possible? And finally, an overall judgment of the given question. Let's start for the conclusion. So in conclusion, we can start with the first mark of restating the question. So when you want to make a conclusion, you can first begin with restating the question. So the statement, oligopolies are able to avoid price competition, are able to avoid price competition while maintaining supernormal profits, are able to avoid price competition while maintaining supernormal profit. So this is a restatement, yeah, from the question. In the long run, is most likely not justified as price competition will likely happen. So I'm saying it's not justified. I have already made my decision, and this is 1 mark because I made my decision already as price competition will likely happen at a particular stage. So I'm saying that no matter what you do, there will always be price competition eventually, whether they are using an aggressive approach or cooperative approach in the operations of the market. So this is a condition, yeah. This might be given 1 mark, but we need to develop it further later on. This is the condition. Whether they're using aggressive or cooperative, there would always be price competition happening at a certain stage. And after that, supernormal profits will also not likely to be achieved. Now we can emphasize the other statement or other part of the question will also not likely to be achieved in the long run due to what? Due to the given circumstances that we mentioned before, because we already discussed that before that the circumstances makes it difficult for supernormal profit to be achieved. Now, however, we have the other side of the story, as I always suggest for evaluation. We need to mention any other conditions, any other external factors, any other thing that the business can do or that the firm can do or not. That is the third evaluation. However, firms in an oligopoly have other chances to try non-price competition. As you can see, we have non-price competition. So we can also focus as an oligopoly, we can focus on non-price competition, such as having stronger brand image or providing more innovative products that have differentiation features. You see, so we can provide more innovative products that have a differentiation features compared to other rivals. So when this happens, this could solve the problem that if we are only using price competition, it will be difficult. You see, the question mentioned that price competition is able to avoiding price competition will be able to maintain supernormal profit. We are trying to give an alternative way. Maybe perhaps they can use non-price competition to maintain supernormal profit, and that is an evaluation for sure, 1 mark. The third evaluation, and we can give some elaboration. This is because they have the opportunity, right? They have the opportunity to do. Why do they have the opportunity to do so? Because as you see, oligopoly is a large firm, so they can benefit from dynamic efficiency. Because of their large scale, right? Due to the large scale of production that they're having, which means what? If this is happening, then having higher profits, if they have higher level of production, having higher profits available to reinvest. So they could use the profit that they make from the output sold and the large scale production to reinvest in various research and development. So we are trying to explain why they can focus on price, because of course they have extra profit. Under this situation, if they have this situation, they might be able to charge higher prices because their products are different. If their products are different, then they might be able to charge higher prices for their products since they have differentiation. Since they have differentiation, consumers will not mind paying the higher price. Of course, as a consumer, they are not minding paying the higher price if it is something very good and different. Thus, they will be able to enjoy supernormal profit. To enjoy supernormal profit. So in this case, they can enjoy supernormal profit in the long run. In the long run, and avoid price competition to a certain extent. Yeah, this is the main idea. But this is going to be partial of the evaluation. This is not done. This is not done yet because, as I said, we have the first conclusion statement, and then we have the situation we're providing. This is the third mark. And then the next one is we need to again have another 3 marks, right? The fourth and the fifth and the sixth mark also needs to be elaborated, which is what are the things that usually happen under oligopoly or the situations. However, since it was mentioned, so we can give a comment on what we have discussed before. Since it was mentioned that oligopolies usually try to lower prices and limit new entrants because they want to try to be competitive, right, to the market in the short run. Okay, their profit might be less. So we are trying to give a comment that we say that they can have higher profit, but at the same time, they usually try to lower prices to be more competitive in the market as well. So there are two sides of the story. So their profit might not be sufficient for them to invest in different innovations. Because if they have lower prices, of course, their supernormal profit would be affected. Their supernormal profit would definitely be affected, resulting in difficulty to achieve dynamic efficiency in the long run. Okay. And then after that, what other things that can happen? At the same time, also, there would be what? Less competitions, right? There will be less competition. Due to this, there will be some less competition. So when firms have less competition, they have the problem of X inefficiency. X inefficiency will come into play. X inefficiency. Yeah. At the same time, the lack of competition, yeah. Firms in oligopoly also has a problem of X inefficiency due to the lack of competition. This may result in being lazy, result in complacency. This may result in complacency and leads to increase in cost of production and leads to increase in cost of production shown by a shift upwards in the LRAC curve. This is because of X inefficiency. This will show that they will have less profit. This shows that they will have a reduction in profit earned. Have a reduction in profit earned. Also, we can give the fifth mark as the situation, right? Whether oligopolies are able to enjoy the supernormal profit or not will depend on government regulations, as I mentioned, how strict the government controls and regulates cartel or collusion practices, and to what extent also the commitment of the firms is the commitment of the firms who are part of the cartel to keep the cartel and going, to keep the cartel going. If there is less strict regulation by the government, and also the firms commit, they may enjoy the supernormal profit. They may benefit from the cartel and enjoy the supernormal profit. Normal profit, since there will be less competition. And finally, the sixth mark, if ever it's needed, overall, there are many factors. So this is like a closing statement here. If you can still have time to formulate, there are many factors to be considered that may affect the operations of an oligopoly. But again, the statement But again, the statement of the question, we go back to the question again, but the statement that oligopolies are able to avoid price competition, but the statement oligopolies are able to avoid price competition while maintaining supernormal profits in the long run is not going to be justified in all circumstances. So this is like the sixth mark, and this is the different situation, the fourth and fifth mark. And this first paragraph would include 3 marks. Conclusion statement, concluding statement, and then the reasoning, and then the other thing that the firm can do, and then the difficulty of that implementation, external factors such as government regulation or the cartel breaking up, that's an external factor or situation, and a closing overall justification for the essay. So that will be for this oligopoly 20 marks question. We go back to the arrangement here. We can check that the breakdown of the markings by Cambridge, it will be 14 and 6. They will use the level-based marking. Yeah, level-based marking. Level-based marking will be used level 1, level 2, level 3 will be used. But then again, I also have an alternative, and this is also reliable for us to easily break down how many marks is the knowledge, is the analysis, the evaluation, what are the things that we need to discuss under each. It will be relatively easier to understand. So I think that will be for this oligopoly discussion.